Hello, viewers of the future. I'm Endragh. We're continuing with more The Light Fantastic. So I know, I didn't have a video yesterday. That's because it's getting a little hard right now to record videos because my dad can now work from home, and when he does, he works in the room right behind me, and I'm worried about any sound being picked up by the mic. So that's why we haven't you know, I haven't recorded because I'll usually be very tired the night before and be like, I'll record tomorrow, and then the day comes and Dad's working from home, and I'm like, well, so I'll try and get better at that. But yeah, sorry I haven't been keeping an everyday schedule like I was hoping to. It's something I'm working on. So last time, Rincewind and Two Flower escaped from the gingerbread house on a flying broom, flew up above the clouds, saw a red, baleful star, and then immediately ended with Rincewind knew precisely what to do in these circumstances. He screamed and pointed the broom straight down. So, they are flying somewhere. And we're going to continue. Galder Weatherwax stood in the center of the octagram and raised his hands. Rushula Baduda Tuhu, do my bidding. I'm not going to read those. A small mist, it's names. A small mist formed over his head. He glanced sideways at Trimon, who was sulking at the edge of the magic circle. This next bit's quite impressive, he said. Watch. Kolta Bahal, Kolta Sham, to me, O spirits of small, isolated rocks, and worried mice not less than 3 inches long. What? Said Trimon. That bit took quite a bit of research, agreed Galder. Especially the mice. Anyways, where was I? Oh yes! He raised his arms again. Trimon watched him and licked his lips distractedly. The old fool was really concentrating, bending his mind entirely to the spell, and hardly paying any attention to Trimon. Words of power rolled around the room, bouncing off the walls and scuttling out of sight behind shelves and jars. Trimon hesitated. Galder shut his eyes momentarily, his face a mask of ecstasy as he mouthed the final word. Trimon tensed, his fingers curled around the knife again, and Galder opened one eye, nodding at him, and sent a sideways blast of power that picked the young man up and sent him spiraling against the wall. Galder winked at him and raised his arms again. To me, O spirits of... There was a thunderclap, an implosion of light, and a moment of complete physical uncertainty during which even the walls seemed to turn in on themselves. Trimon heard a sharp intake of breath, and then a dull, solid thump. The room was suddenly silent. After a few moments, Trimon crawled out from behind a chair and dusted himself off. He whistled a few bars of nothing much and turned towards the door with exaggerated care, looking at the ceiling as if he had never seen it before. He moved in a way that suggested he was attempting the world speed record for the nonchalant walk. The luggage squatted in the center of the circle and opened its lid. Trimon stopped. He turned very, very carefully, dreading what he might see. The luggage seemed to contain some clean laundry, smelling slightly of lavender. Somehow, it was quite the most terrifying thing the wizard had ever seen. Well, he said, you, wouldn't have seen another wizard around here by any chance? The luggage contrived to look more menacing. Oh, said Trimon. Well, fine, it doesn't matter. He pulled vaguely at the hem of his robes, and took a brief interest in the detailing of its stitching. When he looked up, the horrible box was still there. Goodbye, he said, and ran. He managed to get through the door just in time. Rincewind? Rincewind opened his eyes. Not that it helped much. It just meant that instead of seeing nothing but blackness, he saw nothing but whiteness, which, surprisingly, was worse. Are you all right? No. Ah! Rincewind sat up. Rincewind sat up. He appeared to be on a rock speckled with snow, but it didn't seem to be everything a rock ought to be. For example, it shouldn't be moving. Snow blew around him. Two Flower was a few feet away, a look of genuine concern on his face. Rincewind groaned. His bones were very, were very angry at the treatment they had recently received, and were queuing up to complain. "What now?" he said. You know when we were flying, and I was worried we might hit something in the storm, and you said the only thing we could possibly hit at this height were clouds. You know when we were flying, and I was worried we might hit something in the storm, and you said the only thing we could possibly hit at this height was cloud stuffed with rocks? Well, how did you know? Rincewind looked around, but for all the variety and interest in the scene around him, they might as well have been in the inside of a ping-pong ball. The rock underneath was, well, rocking. He ran his hands over it, and felt the scoring of chisels. When he put an ear to the cold, wet stone, he fancied he could hear a dull, slow thumping. Like a heartbeat, he crawled forward until he came to the edge, and peered very cautiously over it. At that moment the rock must have been passing over a break in the clouds, because he caught a dim but horrible distant view of jagged-edged mountain peaks. They were a long way down. He gurgled incoherently, and inched his way backwards. This is ridiculous," he told Two-Flower. "Rocks don't fly. They're noted for not doing it." "Maybe they would if they could," said Two-Flower. "Perhaps this one just found out how." "Let's just hope it doesn't forget again," said Rincewind. He huddled up in his soaking robes and looked glumly at the clouds around him. He supposed there was some people somewhere who had control over their lives. They got up in the morning and went to bed at midnight in the reasonable certainty. They got up in the morning and went to bed at night in the reasonable certainty of not falling over the edge of the world, or being attacked by lunatics, or waking up on a rock with ideas about its situation, its station. He dimly remembered leading a life like that once. Rincewind sniffed. This rock smelt of frying. The smell seemed to be coming from up ahead, and appealed straight to his stomach. "Can you smell anything?" he said. "I think it's bacon," said Two-Flower. "I hope it's bacon," said Rincewind, "because I'm going to eat it." He stood up on the trembling stone, and trotted forward into the clouds, peering through the wet gloom. At the front or leading edge of the rock, a small druid was sitting cross-legged in front of a small fire. A square of oil-skin was tied around its head, and knotted under his chin. He was poking a pan of bacon with an oriental sickle. Said Rincewind. The druid looked up, and dropped the pan into the fire. He leapt to his feet, and grippled the sickle aggressively, or at least as aggressively as anyone can look in a long, wet, white nightsheet and dripping headscarf. "I warn you, I shall deal harshly with hijackers," he said, and sneezed violently. "We'll help," said Rincewind, looking longingly at the burning bacon. This seemed to puzzle the druid, who, to Rincewind's mild surprise, was quite young. He supposed there had to be such things as young druids, theoretically. It was just that he had never imagined them. "You're not trying to steal the rock?" said the druid, lowering the sickle a fraction. "I didn't even know you could steal rocks," said Rincewind wearily. "Excuse me," said Two-Flower politely. "I think your breakfast is on fire." The druid glanced down, and flailed ineffectively at the flames. Rincewind hurried forward to help. There was a fair amount of smoke, ash, and confusion, and the shared triumph of actually rescuing a few pieces of rather charred bacon did more good than a whole book on diplomacy. "How did you get here, actually?" said the druid. "We're 500 feet up, unless I've got the ruins wrong again." Rincewind tried not to think about height. "We sort of dropped in as we were passing," he said. "On our way to the ground," Two-Flower added. "Only your rocks broke our fall," said Rincewind. His back complained. "Thanks," he added. "I thought we'd run into some turbulence a while back," said the druid, whose name turned out to be Bellerophon. "That must have been you." He shivered. "It must be morning by now," he said. "Sod the rules. I'm taking us up. Hang on." "What to?" said Rincewind. "Well, just indicate a general unwillingness to fall off," said Bellerophon. He took a large iron pendulum out of his robe, and swung it in a series of baffling sweeps over the fire. Clouds whipped around them. There was a horrible feeling of heaviness, and suddenly the rocks burst into sunlight. It leveled off a few feet away above the clouds, in a cold but bright blue sky. The clouds that had seemed chillingly distant last night and horribly clammy this morning was now a fleecy white carpet stretching away in all directions. A few mountain peaks stood out like islands. Behind the rock, the wind of its passage scalpeled the clouds into translucent whirls. The rock was about 30 feet long and 10 feet wide, and bluish. "What amazing paranorma!" said Two-Flower, his eyes shining. What's keeping us up?" said Rincewind. "Persuasion," said Bellerophon, wringing out the hem of his robes. "Ah," said Rincewind sagely. "Keeping them up is easy," said the Druid, holding up a thumb and squinting down the length of his arm at a distant mountain. "The hard part is landing." "You wouldn't think so, would you?" said Two-Flower. "Persuasion is what keeps the whole universe together," said Bellerophon. "It's no good saying it's all done by magic." Rincewind happened to glance down through the thinning clouds to a snowy landscape a considerable distance below. He knew he was in the presence of a madman, but he was used to that. If listening to this madman meant he stayed up here, he was all ears. Bellerophon sat down with his feet dangling over the edge of the rock. "Look, don't worry," he said. "If you keep thinking the rock shouldn't be flying, it might hear you and becomes persuaded, and you will turn out to be right, okay? It's obviously you aren't up to date with modern thinking." "So it would seem," said Rincewind weakly. He was trying not to think about rocks on the ground. He was trying to think about rocks swooping like swallows, bouncing across landscapes in the sheer joy of levity, zooming skywards in a... He was horribly aware he wasn't very good at it. The Druids of the Disc prided themselves on their forward-looking approach to the discovery of the mysteries of the universe. Of course, like Druids everywhere, they believed in the essential unity of all life, the healing power of plants, the natural rhythm of the seasons, and the burning alive of anyone who didn't approach all this in the right frame of mind. But they had also thought long and hard about the very basics of creation and had formulated the following theory. The universe, they said, depended for its operations on the balance of four forces which had identified as charm, persuasion, uncertainty, and bloody. The universe, they said, depended for its operations on the basics of four forces, which they identified as charm, persuasion, uncertainty, and bloody mindfulness. Thus, it was that the sun and moon orbited the disk because they were persuaded not to fall down, but didn't actually fly away because of uncertainty. Charm allowed trees to grow, and bloody mindedness kept them up, and so on. Some druids suggested there were certain flaws in this theory, but senior druids explained very pointedly that there was indeed room for informal argument, the cut and thrust of exciting scientific debate, and basically it lies on the cut and thrust of exciting scientific debate, and basically it lay on top of the next solist bonfire. So you're an astronomer?" said Two-Flower. "Oh, no," said Bellerophon, as the rocks drifted gently around the curve of a mountain. "I'm a computer hardware consultant." "What's a computer hardware consultant?" "Well, this is," said the Druid, tapping the rocks with a sandaled foot. "Part of one, anyways. It's a replacement. I'm delivering it. They're having trouble with the big circle on the Vortex plane. So they say, anyways. I wish I had a bronze troke for every user who doesn't read the manual," he shrugged. "Well, what use is it, then, exactly?" asked Rincewind. "Anything to keep his mind off the drop below." "You can use it to tell you what time of year it is," said Bellerophon. "Ah, you mean if it's covered in snow, then it must be winter?" "Yes. No. Supposing you wanted to know what a particular star is going to rise." "Why?" said Two-Flower, radiating polite interest. "Well, maybe you want to know when to plant your crops," said Bellerophon, sweating a little. "Or maybe—" "I'll lend you my almanac if you like," said Two-Flower. "Almanac? It's a book that tells you what day it is," said Rincewind warily. "It'd be right up your ley line." Bellerophon stiffened. "Book?" he said. "Like, with paper?" "Yes." "That doesn't sound very reliable to me," said the Druid nastily. "How could a book know what day it is? Paper can't count." He stamped off to the front of the rock, causing it to wallow alarmingly. Rincewind swallowed hard and beckoned Twoflower closer. "Have you ever heard of culture shock?" he hissed. "What's that?" "It's what happens when people spend 500 years trying to get a stone circle to work properly, and then someone comes up with a little book with a paper for every day, and a little chatty bit saying things like, 'Now it's a good time to plant beans,' and 'Early to rise, early to bed makes a man healthy, wealthy, and dead.' And do you know what the most important thing to remember about culture shock?" Rincewind paused for a breath, and moved his lips silently, trying to remember where the sentence had gone to. "Is," he concluded. "What?" "Don't give it to a man flying a 1,000-ton rock." "Has it gone?" Tremon peered cautiously over the battlements of the Tower of Art, the great spire of crumbling masonry that loomed over Unseen University. The cluster of students and instructors of magic far below nodded. "Are you sure?" The bursar cupped his hands and shouted, "It broke down the hubward door, and escaped an hour ago, sir," he yelled. "Wrong," said Tremon. "It left. We escaped." "Well, I'm getting down then. Did it get anyone?" The bursar swallowed. He was not a wizard, but a kind, good-natured man who should not have had to see the things he had witnessed in the past hour. Of course, it wasn't unknown for small demons, colored light, and various half-materialized imaginings to wander around the campus, but there had been something about the implacid onslaught of the luggage that had unnerved him. Trying to stop it would have been like trying to wrestle a glacier. It swallowed the dean of liberal studies, sir," he shouted. Tremon brightened. "It's an ill wind," he murmured. He started down the long spiral staircase. After a while he smiled, a thin, tight smile. The day was definitely improving. There was a lot of organizing to do, and if there was something Tremon really liked, it was organizing. The rock swooped across the high plains, whipped snow from the drifts a mere few feet below. Bellefonte scuttled around urgently, smearing a little mistletoe ointment here, chalking a rune there, while Rincewind cowered in terror and exhaustion, and Twoflower worried about his luggage. "Up ahead!" screamed the druid above the noise of the slipstream. "Behold, the great computer of the skies!" Rincewind peered between his fingers. On the distant skyline was an immense construction of gray and black slab, arranged in concentric circles and mystic avenues, gaunt and forbidding against the snow. Surely man couldn't have moved those nascent mountains. Surely a troop of giants had been turned to stone by some. "It looks like a lot of rock," said Twoflower. Bellefonte hesitated mid-gesture. "What?" he said. "It's very nice," added the tourist hurriedly. He sought for the right words. "Ethnic," he decided. The druid stiffened. "Nice," he said. A triumph of silicon chunk, a miracle of modern mason technology. Nice? Oh yes, said Twoflower, to whom sarcasm was merely a seven-lettered word beginning with S. "What does ethnic mean?" said the druid. "It means terribly impressive," said Rincewind hurriedly, "and we seem to be in danger of landing, if you don't mind." Bellefonte turned around, only slightly mollified. He raised his arms wide and shouted a series of untranslatable words, ending with "nice" in a hurt whisper. The rock slowed, drifted sideways in a billow of snow, and hovered over the circle. Down below, a druid weaved two branches of mistletoe in complicated patterns, and Bellefonte skillfully brought the massive slab to rest across two giant uprights with the faintest of clicks. Rincewind let his breath out in a long sigh. It hurried off to hide somewhere. A ladder banged against the side of the slab, and the head of an elderly druid appeared over the edge. He gave the two passengers a puzzled glance, and then looked up at Bellefonte. About blade time, he said. 7 weeks to Hogwatch night, and it's gone down on us again. Hello, Xanifer, Zack, Riha, said Bellerophon. What happened this time? It's all totally followed up. Today I predict sunrise. Today I predicted sunrise 3 minutes early. Talk about a klutz, boy. This is it. Bellerophon clambered onto the ladder and disappeared from view. The passengers looked at each other and then stared down into the vast open space between the inner circle of stone. What shall we do now? Said Two Flower. We could go to sleep, suggested Rincewind. Two Flower ignored him and climbed down the ladder. Around the circle, druids were tapping the megaliths with little hammers and listening intensely. Several of the huge stone were lying on their sides, and each was surrounded by another crowd of druids who were examining it carefully and arguing amongst themselves. Arcane phrases floated up to where Rincewind sat. It can't be southward incompatibility. The chant of the Tron Spirit was designed for concentric ringing, idiots. Idiot. I say fire it up again and try a simple moon ceremony. All right. Nothing wrong with the stone. It's just that the universe has gone wrong, right? And that's actually going to end it, because that's a good point. I don't know. I'm trying. Yeah, so this has been the Light Fantastic. I've been Endragh. I hope I brought a smile to your face. We'll continue with more tomorrow, hopefully. I should have it out on time. I'm crossing my fingers as much as you are. My dad's home tomorrow, so I don't have any more time to record today, so we'll see. Anyways, I hope I brought a smile to your face. I'm tired, and I slept like 12 hours. No, not really. But anyways, night, guys.